So in some ways, it's the best time ever to start a business because, there's chaos, and chaos is opportunity. When you look at, the entrenched powers that be, when everything is going according to plan, my take is that the most powerful the strong get stronger, and disruption is harder. But when you look at even something like the last year, I mean, it's chaos, and lots of stuff has emerged, and, champions have been dethroned and underdogs are reigning. And
so a few weeks ago, we had Michael Easter on, who is the author of The Comfort Crisis. Yeah. And Darren, you and I read that book. Yeah. Tyler's lazy. He hadn't read it yet.
Okay, hold on. Hey, before you put me on blast in front of our new friend, I am literally 2/3 of the way through it right now. So,
there we go.
So hold your tongue.
We have not heard anything about any comments.
Because I'm not going to advertise while I'm in the middle of something. Once I finish it, then we can talk about it.
Well, we don't need to go on too far down. The point in bringing that up was...
You got a guess in Jason McCarthy.
A name that kept popping up in that book was Jason McCarthy.
Yes.
Who is the founder and CEO of Goruck, which designs, builds, and tests rucksacks, footwear, and apparel, and also leads rucking events globally, led by current and former special forces. Jason, man, we are so excited to have you on. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. I'm really glad to be preceded by Michael too. He's a good friend of mine, and he's just good people. And you should definitely finish that book. It's awesome.
Yeah, it spoke. You said a second ago, spoke your language. That book spoke my language. I loved it. I tore it apart in 2 or 3 days. I mean, it was. Yeah,
it was a really well. I mean, it's a story, but it's well researched. It's you can take it on a lot of different levels, right? I mean, you read a piece of good fiction or something, and it's like, all right, cool, that was entertainment. But this is a feast for your brain too, questioning a lot of your assumptions and how we should live and why. And what are we chasing and why, and go do hard stuff. Yeah. Pretty simple, really.
Yeah, you nailed it. The research, I mean, I think he said he read thousands of studies and talked to people like you. And he did so much work going into that book. So it was really, really impressive. But the reason that we wanted to reach out to you and speak with you is because he highlighted rucking was a big thing that he did and was such a big part of the book, and it had me intrigued. And I've heard of Goruck. Obviously, you see them all over social media, and we see the finished or what the product is today. What we want to understand is your story and how you got here today. And really, we want to go back to the beginning and understand how you grew up and what your family life was like. So take us back there. Where are you from? Where were you born? What was family life like for you growing up, Jason?
So I was born in 1979 in Dayton, Ohio, which is Southern Ohio. My mom was 18-year-old, and she 18 in 5 days when she had me. And, that's a hard thing for someone who's a senior to do. She ended up graduating a little bit early, going into hiding of sorts at my grandparents' house, eventually reconciled with her parents. I kind of brought that back. She was number one in the state of Ohio in tennis as a junior, and then just quit, right? I mean, she's rebellious, right? She got pregnant at 17. You do the math. Right. And she quit, but then, after I was born, picked tennis back up and won junior college nationals out of Sinclair Community College with me, of course, around. Then got a full ride to Florida down in Gainesville, so go Gators. And we moved down there. I was the mascot for the women's tennis team. And she was great. She was, all SEC and, did captain of the team and all that stuff. My dad was, was a pressman in Ohio for 41 years. He just retired last year. So right when I was born, he took a job in Ohio, and I'd go up, and every summer I'd go back and spend time with him and my grandparents. My grandparents on both sides were really important in my life growing up. And when my mom got remarried, we moved to Dallas. So unlike someone on here, I grew up a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And so we moved to Dallas because my stepdad had gone to SMU, but he was an old family friend. I mean, of, my uncles. And it just, there's a lot of families that got brought together. So I got an extra set of grandparents that became a bonus set, I should say, who were also really instrumental. And we bounced around a fair amount, ended up in Jacksonville on the beach side of Jacksonville, actually in 1992. So it's been kind of home since, but I've taken a few detours, and I always would go back to my roots in Ohio, and, no stranger to sort of travel and new schools and all that stuff. I've done all of that.
Yeah. Going back to your mom, I mean, that's awesome story.
Awesome story.
Yeah, it is. And going back to her and she made the transition back into continuing her tennis career, but then she went to the University of Florida. Do you remember has she ever talked to you about what that was like, having a young child and going through that college experience at the same time?
Yeah, it was really hard. I mean, she was on a full ride, so there wasn't the financial pressure of paying for the school, but her parents then helped out a little bit. I mean, we had an apartment, and she always had an extra room, and she gave away kind of like rent to the other person that would stay there, because we were there for 3 years. And that person just had to kind of be around to help watch me a little bit.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So I became kind of, not like all the time. It wasn't daycare. It was just sort of, hey, occasionally she goes on my mom's got to go on a trip or something, and I got to get dropped off at this other friend's house. Or my mom would, she was an exercise fanatic. So there was a place called Body Electric. Remember the 80s, the aerobics craze?
Oh, yeah.
That was it. It was Body Electric in Gainesville, Florida. Rest in peace, And she would bring me to that, and she'd put me off to the side with coloring books, and I would sit there and color or do whatever for the hour-long class. And then I just got used to going places with my mom, and I was always around with her. And, unless she was off, in some tennis match somewhere, and then I got, put with other people. And so I had to learn how to kind of adapt. But, my mom was my center of gravity in my life. And it was one of those things where, everyone wants some kind of perfect Leave It to Beaver style, whatever, like if it would have been like this or that, but we forget what we get out of, the people who did love us, or the people who did spend time with us, or I became more adaptive. I learned how to be around older people. I was kind of raised in part by my grandparents. I mean, my mom was my mom, but she was in some ways kind of like an older sister. She was just so young, so there was always, she needed more help or advice, or, she just says, I didn't know what to do. Yeah. And so she had made friends with some people that had kids, and, I would go over and play with them. Well, their parents were, of course, older than my mom. Right. I'm there. My mom's 22,
right.
And I'm, whatever, 3 or 4. And it's like, this is crazy. I mean, I got a 4-year-old and I'm 42.
Right.
Yeah. I got a 9 and a 6 and a 4-year-old. And it's just completely different. I mean, my mom was 36 when I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
And had to put up with a little, not a lot, but a little bit of, just natural desire for teenage independence when she was in her mid-30s. I mean, this is just...
Yeah, but how much did you get from your buddies?
The boys are definitely knocking down the door. Tell the truth.
My friends really loved my mom.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. She was like, man, your mom is just so cool.
She's
right?
so nice. Yeah, that's what you're thinking.
Can we stay over?
Yeah, I mean, I had one buddy. He would just move out in the summertime. We'd be playing basketball and tennis and football and you name it. And it was just, it's easy. It's like so much of life. It's so, you get it in hindsight so much.
Yeah.
And, it's like, it was just, that's how I grew up, and it could have been different, and I could have faced other challenges, but, we bounced around a lot, and, a lot more people took a vested interest in making sure to know that I was loved.
Yeah.
So despite the difficulties of, so many different schools and, and like every time there was something new, right? A new move or whatever, like I retreated to being more an isolationist just with my feeling, more protective, I should say.
Yeah.
Right. Like you don't want to go put yourself out there too much because you're just going to move next year. Right. And stuff like that. So, there's good sides that come with that as well. And it certainly increased the bond with those who were closest to me.
Yeah. And I think from the very beginning, and this is to those young parents out there that think that, every child, right, has to have this sterile, perfect situation that they need to be protected in and be in the house and has to be quiet and they can't go anywhere and can't expose them to anything. Children are resilient from the start. And for you going to Florida at such a young age, your mom in junior college, but then going to Florida at a young age and, okay, hey, I'm here and I'm moving. That taught you to not be used to chaos, right? But not being destroyed by it when you did experience it because you were used to change and you were used to things. And parents out there, don't feel like you've got to just have everything in perfect control because it's really good for kids to have exposure to different scenarios and inconsistent just lifestyle changes because it's good. It teaches you because like you said, later on in life as you're moving, it was like, okay, I've prepared for this.
I mean, you don't get good at doing hard things by doing easy things.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that, And so, it's kind of to go back to Michael Easter's book, right? I mean, make sure it's hard and don't die.
Yeah.
And your job as a parent, I think, is make sure that your kids know that you love them, right? Above all, make sure and just tell them, right? And side note to that is when you're wrong, say, I'm sorry. It's perfectly acceptable. Yes. Right. But, your kids need to do hard stuff. You can't protect them from everything, but you have to protect them so they don't literally die. I mean, that's the goal. Yeah. And so, it's like you see these parents on the playground and, like if Johnny gets looked at sideways, like they're like going to call the cops or something. I'm like, this is just ridiculous, man. Your kid has to learn some playground rules in life because life is way worse than what you're going to find on the playground. Absolutely. So you don't get good at doing hard things by doing easy things. Part of that is, look, you need to skin your knee up. You need to get, pushed down every once in a while. Someone needs, like, too many people. And I say this intellectually, not for like clickbait BS. Like, people need to learn what it feels like to get punched in the face.
Yes.
Like metaphorically, physically, all of that. You need to know what that feels like. Yeah. And because, there's like the great philosopher Mike Tyson said that, people gotten used to talking too much shit online and not enough people's getting punched in the face, right? I mean, actions have consequences. And just because you can call up your lawyer or call up your mom or whatever, and it's like, that's just not how the real world or a fulfilling life works. You have to be able to persevere through those hard things. So you can't go from doing nothing to climbing Mount Everest. It doesn't work. Yeah. And confidence and leadership, everything is a tiered scale. You make the varsity team, like, man, I'm awesome, right? You try out, you make the college team, right? You don't play for a couple years, but you're like, damn, I'm biding my time, Same deal with the things that we go through in life, and you gotta pay your dues. And the more dues you keep paying, the more you're going to feel some wounds, right? Yeah. That can either knock you down or you can get stronger because of it. But if you never get hit, like, what are we even doing? I mean, think about how America was founded. Think about our DNA as people. Think about what the human race had to go through for us to even survive. And it's like, you look at Johnny sideways and you're about to get an affidavit or something from, some lawyer somewhere. It's ridiculous.
Dude, I'm ready to run to a brick wall.
Go ahead. If you don't say anything else for the rest of the show.
Let's wrap it.
Yeah, if you don't say anything else for the rest of the show, this was an awesome show.
Yeah. Let's call it the Jason McCarthy show.
For sure.
So Jason, I was just saying, where was Dad and all this?
Yeah.
How involved was your father? It sounds like you were moving around too much.
My father was excellent. I mean, I didn't have any. The hardest part was that my mom and dad just didn't get along for a while. And my mom's grandparents blamed my dad, can't fault him too much for knocking my mom up at 17, And so there was just bad blood there. But, I would go and visit my dad 6 weeks in the summer, a week at Christmas, and every other spring break for a week. And, you know, my father and I are different. Like, he's really good at fixing motorcycles, and he's really good at working on stuff in the garage and doing, you know, like he's an extrovert. I'm an introvert, you know, but he doesn't want to go work out. I've always enjoyed that. He wasn't really an athlete, but he's a great skier. I'm a bad skier, but I was a good athlete, you know. But, you know, the overwhelming thing that I picked up from my father is he's the happiest guy I've ever met. And it's just, you know, one of those things where like it breaks the norm for me, because I feel like my happiness is not necessarily his happiness in terms of, and like, we're really close, you know, my dad and I was really close with his parents. Like, he would go to work and we would stay over in the summer at my grandparents' house, and they had a pool in the backyard. They got one when I was probably 5 or 6. And I have such fond memories there in that world. And my dad would come home at 3 p.m. because he worked, you know, when the good years, he'd work second shift, 7 to 3 in the afternoon. And I just couldn't wait. My dad was, you know, we just got to spend this time together, because I didn't have any other friends in Ohio, because I didn't, you know, grow up there. I wasn't going to school there. So I just was dependent on that side of the family. And it was just different. Like, my dad would put me on the back of his Harley and we'd go out, and then my mom's parents would see us out in town, and like, it's like, you know, World War III started, right? You know, back in the day, however it could start. And so it's, you know, he's, like I said, he was a union guy for 41 years. And that is kind of the opposite path that I've chosen. But at the end of the day, like, that's his path to walk, and he loves his buddies. They just sort of show up. He's got a garage that's, you know, I don't know, this thing's like the Taj Mahal of garages though. And it's just like one of my favorite places on planet Earth is just to hang out in the garage and drink a beer with my dad. So it's funny how well that relationship has just grown over the years as well. You know, he taught me stuff like, you know, beer and live music is what money's for. And he took me to all my first concerts, and he loved the Grateful Dead. And, you know, we go to, you know, festivals in the summertime, and we take trips to Niagara Falls. And, you know, there's so much common ground that we found because he put in the time and took me along the stuff that he loved. And, you know, I'm not going to say I wouldn't have loved beer and live music, but, you know, put those things together. It's like, I always think about my dad, and now it's kind of, he'll come down and visit the grandkids, and we'll do it when there's a live music or when there's a live concert somewhere or whatever. And it's just, those traditions are really strong because we have that kind of base of having spent so much time together.
That's amazing.
Man, I hope my 2 kids talk about me like you just talked about your dad right there. Yeah. That is awesome. So awesome.
Like, yeah, my dad used to take me into the garage and make us work out all the time. That's true. And then
no, but just the love and admiration you had for him. And it sounds like, number one, his work ethic just sounds incredible. I mean, sticking to it. He probably passed that along to you. Number 2, just being involved and just loving you no matter what, knowing that you were important to him.
I think it was not that easy too. And kind of a twist of fate. You know, both sets of grandparents were in Dayton, Ohio. And when my mom's dad got older, you know, my mom was gone and my uncle wasn't there in town. My dad started really helping out with his ex-in-laws, because that's just the kind of guy that he always was. You know, they'd had to communicate over the years because I was in town, and I'd stay some nights with my other grandparents. And it's, you know, you can understand again how my grandfather was not especially happy with my dad, but my dad's just a nice guy. Like one of those lessons of just a really nice guy. And if you're a really nice guy, eventually that'll win. It will win out. Yeah. And so, you know, he was just really, really kind to my grandmother and my grandfather. And then my grandfather passed, and my dad helped out my grandmother so much. I mean, he'd come over and just change light bulbs and air filters and make sure she had her water in the right place, and, you know, stuff that gets harder for people. And, you know, I think in our society, it's the first time ever in the history of the universe that we've kind of taken our elderly and just kind of pushed them away because we have the means to be able to do that. And I think that I believe in, you know, individuality and privacy and all that stuff, but I think at times it goes too far. Like, just because you can't afford to send someone over here, like, you know, there's a lot that grandparents can do to mentor not only the next generation, but the next generation in a way that, when they're gone, they're gone. And I miss my grandparents. I still have my grandmother and my, step grandfather that are around. And, I miss all my grandparents, and I wish I had more time with them. Yeah. And so, it's like how to bring that back more, these kind of stronger families cross generations to me. And so I think it's, I had access and a different kind of love from my grandparents that was just really, really important to me. And over time, it really enriched and helped me explain my parents too. So it made those bonds stronger as well.
Yeah, you see your dad in you, man. Yeah. Like that's your dad in you, working in you.
Yeah.
Like you care about people. And that's, and that goes back to, and it's weird. I mean, I want to go back on this because one of the things that when you're talking, it reminds me a lot of how I grew up too. My mother raised me pretty much, but the opposite happened. There was a lot more anger in my father that my father wasn't involved in my life. And as I reflect back, it was just, I always saw other people's fathers in their life, and it took me a long time to forgive. It sounds like you had to open up, and you were living in Dallas and, all over the place, and were away from your father, and you still had that strong relationship with him.
Yeah. I mean, it was something where our family was just extended. I mean, my stepdad, I mean, it took I always liked him. It took a longer time to just really love. I mean, he's one of my best friends now.
Right.
So, I just grew comfortable I didn't have this status quo, Leave It to Beaver style, mom and dad and 2 kids or 3 kids growing up, and then, I had half brother, half sister, not in that order. My sister was 9 years younger. My brother was 12 years younger. So, there was a big gap there that changed dynamics. But, I always looked forward to going to Ohio in the summertime. It was just kind of a great thing. My dad made it fun. I enjoyed the time with my grandparents. They made it as fun as possible. And they realized my grandparents were pretty young. I mean, my grandparents were my grandmother was about my age now when I was I was the age that my kid is. So, I mean, they were active, and that was kind of a blessing. I was the first kid in the family on either side. So I got to spend the most time with my grandparents. But I mean, the harder parts were, I mean, I remember, having to deal with kind of just the loss or the not wanting to. I didn't want to leave my mom. I would get really sad when I left my mom. I'd like cry on the plane on the way up, and I got to figure out a way to dry my tears by the time I get there, and then I'm happy to see dad, and I do that again 6 weeks later. Yeah. And and this was such a different time. I mean, just to wax nostalgic for 10 seconds is, I mean, they would give me wings. My one parent would go up to the actual boarding gate, right? With me, basically walk me on. Right. And then I would go up and, they would put me on my seat, escorted and whatever. And in the middle of the flight, you would call them stewardesses back then, flight attendants now. Yeah. So no disrespect intended. I have a special love for people in that profession. They'd bring me up to the cockpit. I'd fly the plane. Right? Yeah. They'd open up the door and I'd go in there, and they're like, they probably turned it off and stuff. And I'm up there going,
you were flying that thing.
You were flying, man.
Right? I was flying it. And it was such a different time. And then I'd get off, and, I was the last off, and one of the, whomever it was from, it was when Dayton was a major hub. It was a Piedmont US Air hub. So the US Air representative or whatever would come and get me and walk me out. And then there would be my dad or my mom, depending upon if I was coming or going. And so, I really felt fortunate because they all loved me. And I think there was some kind of overcompensation that I really benefited from, right? This idea of, we had you too young, and, we're going to try even harder.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And, I mean, I think that being older as a parent, you have a lot of the kinks worked out. It would be easier to raise an orchid now, right? The orchid wildflower debate. Right. And they had no choice. I mean, it was wildflower for me just because there was so much natural chaos. They just didn't know what they were doing. And so, the older you get, the more means that you have, or the more you're able to kind of, schedule better and bounce around. And, Johnny's calendar is just perfect, and play dates and all this stuff. And it's like, that just wasn't where the world was. And my parents weren't really suited to do that. My mom wasn't really suited to do that anyway. So it was just like, hey, we're going here and you're coming. I was like, all right, awesome. That was my norm.
But really think about it. What is the one thing that's needed is for, like you said, your child to know that they're loved. That is what they remember. That's what impacts them. And that is what it sounds like influenced you more than anything. You knew that both of your parents loved you and put a ton of effort in it, regardless of whatever chaos was around. That's what's important. It doesn't matter how many private lessons you can put them in, the nanny that you have, the toys you have. It doesn't matter. What makes the impact on your child is the attention, the intentionality, and the love that you give them. So I love that. So let's fast forward a little bit to high school. You mentioned that you were an athlete. What were your high school years like? And as you kind of prepared for college and future service in the military, what did those years do for you from a growth standpoint?
So high school was hard for me. I went to the Bowles School in Jacksonville, which is it's a challenging school, and it's a really good sports school. So my senior year, the football team was #1 USA Today with 13 D1 rides, right? Full rides to football.
Okay.
Baseball programming, Chipper Jones went there, a bunch of other, it's a really, the swimming program is top in the country, right? People came back from the Olympics with gold medals. It was a really competitive environment, and the academics were equally as competitive. And, I played tennis. We were good, but it was not on the same level as, like, I wasn't going to the Olympics. I wasn't coming back with anything like that. And so, it was a hard time for me personally as well. My mom and stepdad were marriage difficulties. So I was kind of caught in the middle of home life wasn't perfect. I had younger siblings, house wasn't very big. I lived far away from school, right? So it took an hour to get there one way.
Wow.
And it was just, I look back, it's why now I'm like, I bike to work. I just refuse to do that. So we always kind of overcompensate the things that we didn't like about something. And I just can't, the thought of commuting like that just is a no-go. But I think, this isn't some pity party by any stretch. I was also started out high school small. I'm 6'4" now. I grew 3 inches in college, right? So I was just going through, it's a hard time. It's a hard time to be a kid. Yeah. You're going through it, and you're kind of awkward. Girls, their physical changes happen sooner. Guys, it happens a little bit later. You're expected to kind of be a man or something. I don't know. Right. And you have all these expectations you put on yourself. And then, the guy next to me is like 6'7" and got a full ride to FSU and, 300 pounds and looks like he's 35. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, got acne on my face and like my arms, twice as long as what it should be, except I'm not that tall, and like things are growing, and it's just like crazy. Right. And, it was just it was a challenging time for me. And so I had a really close group of a few friends, but not a lot of friends. I was kind of at that stage in life where I was more comfortable, not putting myself out there. Yeah. And, that I wish I could go back and kind of be a little bit more outgoing, because it's not in my nature, so to say, but that's just where I was. And so, it was just a lot to get through. It was hard. Academics were hard. I was playing, I'd get home late at night after practice, home life was not perfect. Right. And just rinse and repeat. But, it's one of those things where the academic rigors made college a lot easier, right? The time that you put in really learning, and I loved being on a team. I never really loved the tennis parents, so to say, but I loved being on the tennis team. That's where my best friends were. And and stuff like that. And so that stuff was fun. And I carried that over into college, and, you know, all the skills of being adaptive and, you know, like you become what you do. And so for me, it was just sort of, I started to develop a work ethic, and there was a lot of pressure put on me. Right. I mean, my grandparents were paying for me to go there, and I felt like I owed really good grades, and I felt like I owed all this stuff, and I got okay grades, but I was always like, man, this is hard.
Right.
And so look, I mean, I say that mostly because, you know, there's people out there, and this would really continue throughout college, where it's just, you don't have your way figured out in the world. And there's people out there chirping all over the place, chirping and barking. And it's like, what are you going to do with your life? What's next? You know, what, like, you're supposed to have stuff figured out. And what I've found is that the older I get, you have to have some stuff figured out. Like, I'm going to spend time with my kids here. I'm going to do this. You know, my wife and I do this together. It's part of our routines, but you got to have these unknowns. Like, you got to let some magic into your life. And when you're a kid,
wait a minute, say that again. I want you to say that again. Say it again. No, you got to have what in your life?
Magic in your life.
You got to have some magic in your life. Boy, not everything needs to be just scripted, right?
It can't be, you know, it just can't be. And everything is going that way. And so the problem is when you're young, you're open to you're open to so many different things. And it's just a pressure cooker because, you know, you're not tall enough, you're not good looking enough, you don't have enough friends, you know, you're not this on the team, you're not that, and you know, you're not dating the prom queen, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really hard. And that stuff, the more that you learn yourself, the easier all of that stuff gets. And the only way to learn yourself is to go through the adversity of, you know, all of those things that life presents. So, you know, going through pressure cookers like that, some people go through that and they just are will become bitter, or they'll look at it and it's like, man, that just sucked. And they'll try to avoid specifically that. It's like when I got out of the Army, it's like, I'm never doing PT again. I'm never going to wake up early and go do anything because I hate that. Right. Well, that's a terrible answer. Right. Like, I love to be outside. I love to toss sandbags or go for a ruck or go for whatever. Right. Be outside and sweat, be active with buddies. Right. And, you know, it comes full circle eventually. Like, then you can roll around in the dirt. It's still fun. It's awesome even when you're 40. Right. But we go so hardcore against the things that we found uncomfortable. And you have to find the silver lining in order to kind of choose what was good about that, because you learn something about yourself. Don't throw everything out with the lessons that you've learned.
Right.
Did you have that revelation and that awareness in your high school and college years? I mean, now it's easy to look back at 40 and think these things and think about how grateful you are. But were you grateful as you were going through it that, hey, this is hard, but it's going to make me better one day?
So I was grateful, for instance, I was grateful for some of the academic stuff that I got. I mean, it was a cooker, and I knew it was really setting me up well. You know, it was also a school that had a lot of wealth attached to it. And we were like, you know, my grandparents could pay, but I didn't have I was like filling a gas tank off of, you know, the change in the console, or, you know, wherever I could emptying out the couches,
75 cents in that gas tank.
And stuff. And, you know, there's Porsches and Land Rovers in the parking lot and stuff like that. And it's just like, you know, that made me feel inadequate to a certain degree. And yet, you know, there were trade-offs that were like really empowering. So you know, nobody has the full perspective to be really grateful.
Sure. Yep.
But, you know, I was grateful for the friends that I did have. I had some really good friends, and I'm still really good friends with, you know, from those formative years, including the one I married twice, and same girl twice. And so, you know, like I met really good people, and I came to love Jacksonville, this part of the country, and the people here. And so there's so much good that came out of it. And I knew of the silver linings at the time, which is, you know, it's kind of how you get out of bed sometimes, right? It's like, I know this is fun because we have this match against this team. And I got, you know, it's like, that'll get you through a lot.
Yeah. So what were you thinking going through high school and then beyond? Were you thinking, about furthering your education? Was that on your mind, or was it more so like you get out of high school, get a job?
No, there was the expectations of going to college for sure. I mean, this was like 99.9% of the kids that go to Bulls go to college. And so that was it was almost never an option to not go to college, to be more succinct. And that's just expectations of family as well. And so that led me to college. And then I wanted to play tennis. And so I went to a D3 school in Atlanta and had a great experience there as well, right? It was a different time though, from the standpoint of there was the kind of .com bubble that was building. And then while I was in college, you started to hear.
So this is the late 90s then, right?
So I graduated from college in May of 2001. Okay. Graduated high school in 97. And so, early in college, it was kids are getting out and they're making six figures if you just move to California. It's like, what? Like, I didn't even, that sounded like you're playing Monopoly to me.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't really understand it at all. And frankly, I don't know why, but I wasn't really that interested in that path either. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed the economics. I studied economics and art history, and I studied German in college because I had made a buddy and I was going to go stay with him in Germany. I'm like, sure, I'll learn German, stuff like that. And so it was there was just a lot of, obviously the world changed in September of 2001, but I applied to some jobs. I was expected to go get a job right out of college. And it was like, it was like a violation of that when I said, I don't know what I'm going to do and I don't have a job and I'm going to go travel for a summer. It was like, whoa, like I was supposed to play by the rules. Yeah. And, I found that to be, I had to come to that lesson on my own, but traveling the world to try to find answers is not a good plan, right? I mean, at some point you'll kind of discover some things about yourself, but it gets boring and lonely. And if you have a bunch of friends there, like nobody's going to go, it gets old, right? Like we need kind of mission and purpose and a why and stuff. And so without the perspective of why to do this, I mean, I think it would have been better to join the Peace Corps or, do something like that. And so for me, frankly, 9/11 happened and that became almost a blessing in disguise of sorts. And I say that with reverence and respect for the lives that were lost there, but for our nation and for so many of our citizens, it was a huge wake-up call that, there's a lot of value in serving something greater than yourself.
Do you remember where you were?
That meant,
do you remember where you were? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, I had come back from Central America, and I had taken a call center job at a marketing firm because I had to do something. Like traveling for 3 months or whatever had kind of gotten old, and so I'm like, all right, I got to figure something out. Like the forces that be, the pressure was raining down on me, and I'm like, all right. So I took this job, and it was a job. Sometimes you have to just start with a job. So it was filling out databases and calling car centers and trying to, I don't know, figure that out so they could sell them other services or something. And I woke up and I had I was in Daytona Beach, Florida, and I had my, chinos on with my, pockets and, kind of not too wrinkly. I could pass to go. It's Florida. It's a little more lax. And I had my little button down with my shirt on, and I was all, young professional, ready to get going. And I turned the news on because I was always, I don't do this anymore, but I always had a TV on with news. I've always been really interested in, whether it's international affairs, so to say, domestic policy, all that kind of stuff. It's always just interested me. It's kind of makes the world go round. And so I had CNN on, and I remember that I watched, and there's breaking news, with Paul Azan, I think it was. And, a plane has hit the World Trade Center, and nobody knew what it was. Right. And so the first thing that I thought of was, if you remember, JFK Jr. had tragically passed in a self-manned plane crash, right, that he had flown, and it was sad. And I was a JFK fan and still very much am. And so just seemed senseless. And I was like, oh, what kind of an idiot is going to fly their plane into the World Trade Center? Like that, there should be hell to pay for this. And, lo and behold, there was. It just wasn't it wasn't what I initially thought it was. And so I remember it was just a really, confusing time, right?
Yeah. So that ends up leading you to want to join the military. And I believe in 2003, you decided to join the Army, correct?
Yeah. So, true story to fast forward. In the middle of that, though, I applied to all the alphabet soup agencies, right? FBI and CIA and all that. And I went really far down the CIA path. And there was a guy named Mike Spann who passed away. He was the first KIA in the post 9/11 world. And he worked for the paramilitary branch of the CIA. His past was in the Marines. He spoke the dialect in Afghanistan, one of the language, I think Pashto. And so he was sent to Afghanistan. He died in the prison uprising. If you remember, John Walker Lynn was there. And so it was kind of unprecedented at the time, but the CIA did a lot of publicity about his death. And I remember reading that and I was like, this is what I need to go do. And like, I want to be that. I want to serve in that capacity. So I went through the whole CIA process. And the thing about the CIA is they do have that capability. And a lot of their stuff has been turned toward drone strikes and stuff, but they have a very active paramilitary branch. It's just their bread and butter is the case officer route. Right. And so that's where, I kept asking and it takes a year, sometimes 2 to get hired by them. Like they say, if you're in a hurry, you're in the wrong place because they want to vet you. And it's a really long, extensive process, as you would hope it would be. And so I kept just asking about this stuff. Like, how do I do this paramilitary ground branch? I didn't even know what to call it at the time. And eventually, a year in, this guy in this, Northern Virginia secret squirrel kind of nondescript compound office setting was like, hey, check it out. Like, we don't hire direct for those roles. We take them from special operations, from special forces. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's where I need to go. And so it was, thanks for the last year. Yeah. And now let me go over here. And so
couldn't have told
I
me
started
this
looking at
12 months ago.
Sorry?
You couldn't have told me this 12 months ago, guys.
It's like, it ended up, coming full circle again on that front. Cause later, right before I joined the Army, or in that process, I told the girl that I'd fallen in love with the first time I met her when I was 15, that I went to high school with, what I was doing, the process that I was going through. And she later applied to the CIA and became a case officer. And then we got married while I was in the Army, and she was, a school teacher and then going through the CIA and the farm and all that stuff. So, sometimes unintended consequences, right? But, what I found out trying to become an officer was there was a really long line to serve our country as an officer in the military in 2001, 2002, since, as far as I know. And it kept getting bumped and not making it. And so eventually I was like, college degree and all, I got to go enlist. The wars are passing me by. And so in March 2003, we invaded Iraq, and, the Rolling Stone articles came out on Generation Kill, which would later become a book and a mini series and stuff. And I was following that, and politics aside, I mean, I kind of, joined up to go to Afghanistan. I wanted to be on the same mountain Bin Laden was, wherever he was. And I'm like, let's see how this goes for you, big guy. Right. And that would not ultimately be my path, which is okay. But, I just felt like the wars were passing me by, and I felt like I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't sign up. So, October of 2000, and probably enlisted in September, but I didn't leave until October. And so, it was a big uproar with my family and all that stuff.
Any military background in your family on either side?
Yes, but not close to it. Okay. It wasn't sort of a military. I mean, my grandfather had been in Korea, but never talked about it. And that was on my dad's side. He was an artillery officer. Uncle flew.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, my uncle flew helicopters in the Navy, but it's like, it wasn't in a time of war. Korea was, but my grandfather said he was pretty far from it. I never really got the full story, which is, kind of a shame as well.
Right. Well, so what was the expectation? What did your parents, your grandparents, what did they want you to do?
I mean, before 9/11, they would have thought that I would go, remember, this is like the time of Wall Street and Gordon Gekko and get out and make money and do that. And, you know, serve your country by making money. And like that's great. And that's fine. Right. Like, I think we need to unleash the scientists and the entrepreneurs, and we need to figure out the new moon missions, and we need to, you know, do so many other things. But that to me, we look back on that era, and there was just not a great push towards service that I wish that there were, you know, that 9/11 kind of brought about, but I think needs to come back even more. And so, you know, I was expected to go be a businessman or something like that. You know, if after school I would have said, hey, you know, I'm going to go be a diplomat, or even I'm going to be an officer, would have been a lot more of in line with expectations. I mean, anytime you tell your family you're going to join up and join special forces and it's a time of war, I mean, they're going to worry. It's going to be hard, you know? Sure. So it's just, it was kind of it was a curveball, we'll say.
So walk us through that, like, you know, basic training to special forces training. What was that experience like for you? Was it harder than you expected? Was it different? What was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'd seen Full Metal Jacket and all that stuff, right? I mean, what's basic training? And basic training was a lot more miserable in different ways than I expected. I mean, it was Fort Benning, Georgia in the wintertime. And that's a special form of hell right there. I mean, when you just get up and you're just standing there for an hour, or you're just out patrolling and then you stop and you're just, call it shiver PT, like shiver physical training. I mean, you're just there, it's just gets to your bones, and it's just horrific. And, you know, the whole break you down to build you up. I mean, I had a little bit more perspective. I was 24, I guess. I had a little bit more perspective than some of the young guys, right? Because most of the guys are between 17 and 20, I'd say. Probably even closer to the younger side of that. And so, you know, it was just kind of like, you can't stop Father Time. And there was this older National Guards guy, Montgomery Singleton. He was also a police officer with the San Francisco Police Department. And he was a very calming figure. He was a big guy, and, you know, he was already serving in the police department. So he was calming for all of us, which was great. But, you know, I learned a ton of lessons from, I mean, my drill sergeant was a hugely inspirational person to me. I'm still in touch with him now. And, you know, he cared about us. This is a time of war. And so, you know, he really had that tough love. But then I will never forget it, on the airfield at Fort Benning at the very end, he's like, hey, men, gather around. And he got us all around. He's like, I've been really hard on you. And, you know, I just want you to know, take the lessons that you've learned and bring the same attitude to your unit when you get there. But, you know, you're going to go to war, and I want you to stay alive. And that's why I did the things that I did. And so it's like, man, sometimes it's an explanation that's that simple that'll stick with someone forever. So, you know, teaching somebody or telling them the why, and I've taken this in my professional career or my time, you know, life as a parent. It's like, tell people the why. You know, if you treat someone like a private, sometimes you have to treat people like a private, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to yell and scream, but you've got to, you know, sometimes it's required, but you can still tell people the why and tell them that you care about them and want them to be successful and stuff like that. And that can make all the difference. I mean, you know, he had already earned my respect and our respect, but that was just took it to another level. Yeah.
So that's okay. So walk us through special forces, transitioning from basic training to special forces.
Yeah. So I got on a bus and went to, you know, airborne school, which is right there. So I had a contract that took me through the pipeline direct. They needed more special forces soldiers. So they would guarantee that you could go to these schools. You just had to pass, right? You know, and statistically almost nobody does, but they kind of don't tell you that when you sign up. It's like, hey, if you make it, you make it. And truth is if you make it, you make it. So, you know, airborne school and airborne school is terrifying. I mean, anybody that says that, you know, they weren't scared to death when they jumped out of a plane, I mean, it's terrifying. You know, you do a night jump, you got all your combat equipment on. It's heavy. The landing is terrible. I mean, you just land like a sack of potatoes, man. And it's you just feel the shock waves come from your feet all the way to like the top of your skull. Just like, it's like you've been tasered or something. I don't know, but it hurts. Yeah. And you just learn to kind of deal with it.
Darren, how many planes have you jumped
Zero. And Jason, you just made this shit very casual. Oh, it hurts.
Jump out of a plane.
And it hurts. Like, shit. I'm not sure. That is not happening.
There's better ways to do it. I mean, there's better kind of parachutes and there's better this. But like you even watch a show like Band of Brothers or something and watch how they land. And then it's like, oh, they just pull. Like, that hurts, man. It really hurts when you land. And it doesn't hurt as bad as some other stuff, but it sucks. Right. And you learn how to deal with it. Like, that's part of the thing. You just learn how to deal with stuff. And so, that's 3 weeks. And overall, it was not as physically demanding as I had expected, but that would come later. And then the Special Forces Qualification course, it's just called the Q course, started. And what I did not know, I didn't really know what it was. I mean, I wish I could tell you I did all this research, which I tried to do on what all this was before I went, but you just see pictures of people with green camo on their faces and they're out in the woods and it's like, all right, I guess we're going to go play Army, but what does that mean? How do you do that? Right. And how do you build that up? And so, an adage that I learned from a mentor of mine, just a few years ago was to be a great teammate, first you have to be a great individual. Mm-hmm. Now, the corollary to that is then you have to submit to the team, right? Because the person that is the great individual, but it's all about them, that's called a cancer on a team, right? And so, but you have to prove yourself. You have to prove to yourself and you have to prove to the regiment or to the team that you're capable, and you're able to meet this standard. And you don't know what this standard is, but you're able to meet it. And so the first thing that you have to prove in Special Forces is that you can navigate through the backcountry, the woods of North Carolina with a map and compass and a heavy ass rucksack. And so that was my introduction of we went on one little road march or a couple road marches in basic training, but that was different. This was, hey, here's 45 pounds minimum. You put it in this big giant Army green rucksack, and it's mostly just so that you have weight. You don't end up using any of that stuff when you're out there rucking. And it's just you have to meet those time hacks. So here's your points, go get them. Mm-hmm. And you have to the shortcuts are never shortcuts. Those are called long cuts, right? It's like, oh, if I go this straight line, awesome, I'll be there in no time. Well, you go through there, and before you know it, it's like the wait a minute vines have just encircled you 360 degrees. You forget which direction's which. You're pulling out your compass to say, okay, that's north. You drop your rucksack. You're so wrapped up. You pick your rucksack up. You're throwing it forward. It's like landing on your feet. It's not going anywhere because you're trying to break through this brush, and then you get to the river, and then you have to cross the river, and then you have to fight through brush on the other side, and you learn a lot about yourself out there when things don't go your way because they don't. And so it's mile after mile. And the interesting thing to me was when you look at all of these schools out there, you see the Discovery Channel and the yelling and the screaming and all of this stuff. It wasn't that at all. It was quiet. I mean, it was so quiet. They had a whiteboard, and the whiteboard outside where the cadre were, that's where they would give you the instructions. Like they didn't even speak to you. Wow. Like, be here this time, this place, this uniform. It's like, all right, right face forward, march, do your best, men, go.
Yeah, that is not what you see.
And so, there was 3 hours of log PT, the stuff, lift the log, then you see there's blood and snot and dirt and, people yelling at people and, you're weak and all this stuff. And then there's 3 hours of rifle PT, raise the rifle, and it's dummy rifles because they get pretty jacked up. And then sprint over here and come back. That's 6 hours out of 3 weeks in selection. The rest is just dead silence. And so, but I passed that. I turned out to be a pretty good rucker, just from the standpoint of I got long legs. It's probably, if I had to pick a sport that I was kind of built for, it would be rucking or swimming. And just how my body works. And so I wasn't as good at anything else, but this was kind of my strength, which was good, because some of the army stuff, the tactics and stuff, I mean, that stuff was a little bit harder for me. And so you have to be good at something though. And I was the muscle, right? Like, oh, there's more weight. Okay, I can carry that, right? And I had to learn, man. It was a pressure cooker as well. It's like, hey, you have to be in. So after these individual tests happen, then the course evolves, and it's team tactics, and everyone rotates through leadership lessons, or leadership roles rather. And so you have to direct an ambush or a raid or whatever. And there's doctrine that you learn on how to do that. You have to navigate there. You have to be there early. You have to in place, interlocking sectors of fires on your machine guns. You have to, you just have to do these basic doctrinal things. And, you can look at some of this as antiquated, right? Because it's not necessarily how the wars are fought right now with gun trucks and, GPS and bombs dropping. But, one of the rules of the soft truths or special operations forces truths is humans are more important than hardware. All that stuff will break. Everything will go back to the least common denominator, which is you and your team. Yeah. And you have to be resilient, and you're more resilient together. So make sure that you can play well with others, and that you're still a value add to your team. And that's really what they're testing over the course of, for me, it was 2 years in training.
Yeah. Wow. So you go into this, what was your mindset? And we haven't really discussed, how you handled failure earlier on in your life, but you're going into this not knowing a ton about what the Special Forces training looks like, other than what maybe you saw in magazines or a TV commercial. But did you go into it thinking, okay, there's no way in hell I'm going to fail, like no matter what, I'm making it on the other side? Or was it, hey, I'm going to go in and just do my best and find out okay, actually I'm built for this?
So it was actually in the middle. And I think there's an arrogance associated with I could never fail, because I saw great people get injured, or bad luck happened, or whatever. And I think that if you're hoping to do your best, I think you're not confident enough. Yeah. This is my story anyway. Yeah. And so for me, the piece that I made was, it was basically like, okay, here's this standard, and I don't know if I'm going to achieve it. There were definitely times, and I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to pass this. I think they're going to fail me. Right. If anybody that says that they didn't go through that, I mean, I'd really want to sit down with them and understand how they're a cyborg, And so it's this thing where what I made my peace with was, I'm not going to quit.
Yeah.
No matter what happens. And, everyone reaches a low point in the training. And phase 2 was really hard for me. It was Vietnam era jungle patrolling tactics. And I just didn't grow up around this at all. It didn't come quite as naturally to me as it did to others. It was just kind of, I asked one of the cadre a question, like, well, why are we doing this again? Like I was still in a college lecture or something. Yeah. And that just put, a huge bullseye on me. It's like, oh, the question guy, right? And so then it's just, you do it to yourself. Yeah. And the pressure cooker comes on, and it's like, man, how do I dig myself out of this hole? And the way that I dug myself out of that hole was really simple. I was just really good at carrying heavy weight, long distances. And I was significantly better at that than most people were. And I relate it to just basic body type stuff. I mean, my legs are really long. Yeah. So I have to take, if you have to take 10 steps, I have to take 6 over the course of, 3 weeks.
It adds up.
It does add up.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, that was a superpower that I could leverage at that time. And, just try to give more to the people on your team, because peers were an important part of this as well. Yeah. I mean, the cadre can only see so much. So it turns into, you judge and grade your peers. And, can you play well with others? If they don't want to work with you, guess what? The guys that are already Green Berets probably aren't going to work well with, aren't going to want to work with you either. Yeah. And you have to be the kind of person that can play well and work well with others.
I want to take a quick break from this episode with Jason McCarthy and talk to you guys a little bit about our sponsor, Choctaw Casino and Resort. We've been talking about it for weeks and months now. The time is almost upon us, the new resort. What are you most excited about, D, about the new resort?
The spa, hands down. Well, I'll tell you this. It's 1 and 1A, 1B. It's the pool area. Mm-hmm. So I can take the kids. We can have a great time. I can bring all my friends, and we can sit out and lounge out there while the kids go down the slides. That's one thing. But also the casino and then the spa area. Like I it's crazy that I say this, but I love to be pampered, man.
Dude,
I'm
I'm
a diva now, man.
You get pedicures, don't you?
I get pedicures. I get massages. I like taking care of myself. My wife has introduced me to a whole new world. And I know that Choctaw Casino and Resort is definitely going to do it.
Now there's a visual for you. Darren kicked back in his bright yellow robe. He's got the little cotton balls in between his toes, getting his toes done.
And nose done.
So if you're a big fan like Darren is of getting your feet played with, go to Choctaw Casino Resort, the brand new spa, brand new resort. Now back to the episode.
And that's interesting, right? You're going through this and knowing that, look, was there a set number of spots that they could actually fill? Like you had to finish in the top, 60 spots, or you had to finish in this in order for you to move on? Or was it you just have to finish and you have to complete everything?
That would be a hotly contested question.
Okay.
I don't know that there's, certainly in the officer billets, they have their goals or their targets for the number of people that will pass through. I mean, they were trying to increase the numbers of special forces. So at the same time, when that boils down to the tactical level of the actual cadre who's giving you a go, no go at this station, right? I mean, it's pretty primordial. Like if you're not, if you're a bad fit, they're going to get rid of you.
Yeah, because that's what's interesting is it's like training camp in football. And I always have to preface, I'm never comparing our military to football, but training camp, like it's like we're on the same team, working for the same goal, and we are sacrificing our bodies for the team, for each other, but at the same time, I'm competing with you. Right. And through special forces training, it's like, okay, hey, you're hiking or you're rucking and, you're on mile 10 and it's like, hey, I'm competing against you. But then you also have that sense of, hey, you're my brother. I want to bring you along as well. So how did you battle with that? Like, hey, I'm also here to support you and build you up because, man, we're fighting the same war side by side. But at the same time, I also need to pass you because I need to make sure that I'm a part of this unit.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first is competition breeds excellence.
That's right.
You've got a bunch of type A alpha males that are going through this course. I mean, that's the community, and iron sharpens iron. So, every day it's like you're stepping into the wolf pack, man. You better show up ready.
Yeah.
And the difference though is it's not a zero sum game. You're not actually competing. You're not competing for a set number of slots that coach picks or whatever. It's more like, I just want to beat you because I want to fucking beat you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And there's such a beauty and a simplicity to that. And, it's like, man, I suck at this. I've got to get better. Yeah. And there's just, it's like, and it's not about the money or the glory or whatever. It's about honor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's about like, you want to be respected.
Yeah.
And so, you'll take somebody that's willing, assuming certain baselines, somebody that's willing to just put the time in and live by that kind of a code that just wants to get better and keep improving themselves. I mean, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
And so if you suck, you have to leverage your superpowers, but at the same time, you can't have something that's a debilitating liability.
Yeah.
You can't have something that's going to get someone else killed.
Yeah.
So you have to be proficient in certain weapon systems, and you have to be able to make comms, and you have to have basic first aid, basic first aid skills, stuff like that. Over the course of your career, you get better and smarter. Right? It's the same. Like, to me, sports and the military are very similar, right? There's just at some point, the life or death thing is, it's a different level, but there's so much that's similar. Yeah. And, this, like, it felt like, not like life or death, I guess, but to me, it felt like that, being on teams growing up and stuff. Like, cause that's all I knew. I wasn't I wasn't out, fighting on the frontier for, our plot of land to stay safe. It was just that was it to me. So there's a lot of crossover and similarities. And, at some point though, you want the people that are like the people that spend the time to teach other people their skills specifically, because if you want to be better at rucking, for instance, it's like, I can show you how to pack your ruck and I can give you the tips and the tricks and I can, tell you, what kind of footwear and what kind of gait and what kind of stuff, but eventually you have to go do it.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. And if you want it, if you suck at rucking, then you got to go do it to get better. That's how this works. It's the same as, lifting weights in the gym or doing anything, right? What you gravitate toward is the people that'll put that time in.
Yeah.
Like those people are just hugely inspiring, right?
Yeah.
And then, the mentors that are willing to spend the time with others for, when they could be doing something for themselves, right? But they're going to spend that time to help develop someone else or to make the team better by giving someone else a little tip or a trick. I mean, all that stuff, that builds a happy locker room, a happy team room. And that stuff, the intangibles that you get out of that are immense.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, the similarities, with football, and you said the military. It becomes your identity. It becomes something that you're known for. And so the transition away is really difficult for a lot of people. So you end up serving 3 deployments, and in 2008 you decide it's time to move on. It's time to transition to something else. Talk to us about that transition away from the military and why you made that decision.
So it was a lot harder than I expected, which is basically, the AAR from everybody that's ever done it. So, my personal life was such that, my wife was a case officer for the CIA. She was working in West Africa. We had been married for almost 5 years, 4.5 years, had never lived together at the time. So, it was like, the first ever Baghdad to Abidjan long distance relationship in the history of man, and, we had known each other forever. We were friends, and it was just one of those things we were just kind of skipping to the end. Like, how do we get to this final kind of like, oh, we can be together. And, cause then through her, by the way, I had met everybody at Ground Branch, not everybody, but a lot of people at Ground Branch in the CIA who were hiring managers, who were all these things. And they were like, oh yeah, whenever you're done, just come on over. Right. Like once you're in the system, and we were in the system with her, right? Like I was in that system. And so it's like, okay, cool. Well, I'll get out, which was really hard. Cause I loved my team. I had earned their respect. I respected them. It was a great feeling to serve. I mean, war is just that thing. Like it'll bring people together in such a great way for how horrific it is. And yet, we also did some training missions and stuff like that were just a lot of fun, and the people were great. And so I got out for the larger plan though. And the plan made sense. Like I'd signed up for revenge, but I had unlocked this goal of service. And that was kind of a change of heart. And so I'm like, okay, I don't want to be, a consultant or a banker or a money man anymore. I want to serve our country. And so it was simple to see that to me, like, okay, go live with Emily in West Africa, figure out what to do while I'm there. And then, we'll come back and I'll go to the farm and then go through whatever stuff there is. And then, I'll be in the agency with her. And so, I cried on the way out of Fort Carson. I turned in my parking credentials to get on post and stuff like that. I turned it in, and that gate is right by the exit gate. I'm thinking it's actually outside of I think it's outside of the gate that actually gets you on post. And I had to take a razor blade and cut the sticker off of my windshield and, turn that in. And then I had a long drive from Colorado to Florida with, a Nissan Xterra full of whatever 10 duffel bags I had. And I was like, man, I did not expect to feel like this. And so, but it's like, all right, greater mission at hand, let's go. So I jumped on a plane and I was in West Africa, and it just was immediately terrible. Like, this girl that I'd loved and married and been in love with and was still in love with. And it was just, we'd just been apart for too long. And, she was in high octane job. I'd been in a high octane job, and it just, they say you grow apart, and we grew apart, we were apart, and it was just like really, really, it's been the hardest thing in my life. It's like watching your life go down in flames and up in smoke, and you're just a spectator, and you just feel helpless. And that's exactly how I felt, because, before you know it, I mean, 3 weeks later or whatever, 2 months later, maybe, I was on a plane back to New York City, and I'm sleeping on my buddy's couch then, and like lying to people about why I'm back in the States. And, like it just, we're in the circle in the drain here on the whole marriage thing. Yeah. And that was just really hard. It was an enormous failure, and it was very humiliating. And it was to someone that, my family loved, and she loved my family, and I loved her family. And, we'd been together, and it was this couple that everyone was rooting for. I mean, she's a fucking case officer for the CIA, and I'm a Green Beret serving in war, in the global war on terror. I mean, what's not to root for, right? And you want this to work so badly. And, we just didn't put the time in. And so that didn't work out, and we had a big fight over the dog, and she eventually gave me the dog, said, you need him even more than I do, right? Because I was not in a good place, right? I mean, rock bottom is not a fun place to be. And so, got the dog and kind of figured out slowly with, a couple trusted friends and stuff like that, what was next in life, and how do I rebuild on top of nothing, which was a very sharp detour from where I thought I was going to go and from what I'd been, right? Because when you're a Green Beret serving in war, like, it's pretty absolute, right? It's like, I am feeling pretty good about my value. Like, my confidence levels are high. You just feel good about, I'm providing value, service to America. That feels really good. And so then it just all rips away. And, I started applying to schools because I had a free GI Bill, which I'm grateful to the American taxpayer to this day for. So, I mean, I say that in complete seriousness, like, thank you to the American taxpayer for financing that, because it bought me time. I ended up going back to business school, or to business school, I should say, in DC. And it was, it just bought me time, which is what I needed. I didn't need a huge pressure cooker of something, least of all from myself. I needed to feel like I was productive. I needed something. And, going back to school is not the same as going back to Iraq, which is where my buddies went. But I needed something to kind of keep the structure in my life going. And those couple years were really instrumental in kind of the slow rebuild of my life. Yeah.
So was there a step? Does something happen through that process? So you're in New York City at this time, right? 2 years. You're saying, you've moved out of your buddy's house? I'm guessing.
Yeah, I crashed on his couch for a while until I got into business school at Georgetown in DC, and then I moved out, and it was just, I'm grateful to him, to Jack, I called him from one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, like my best friend from growing up. And I sent him an email from West Africa, and I was like, man, things are really bad here, and can I just come and crash with you? And he's like, absolutely. When do you get in?
Right.
And like, reaching out for help is hard.
Yes.
Like, hey, my life's a train wreck, and I need a friend. I mean, it's just really hard to do, and I would really recommend that people do it when you need it, because people are there to help, and find someone that you think will do that. And if it doesn't work out, then go ask someone else.
Yeah,
like, it just is what it is. Like, that's what I needed in my life, because I couldn't do it by myself. And so it was just humiliating, man.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife, Emily, had babysat my siblings growing up. It's like, we were really good friends. We were on the tennis team together. It was just really hard. And so, time does help, though. And doing other things that are productive help. Right. And so that's what worked for me.
Yeah. And one of those things that you did productively was start Goruck. Where did that idea come from in this whole time?
So when I was in West Africa with Emily, I was there over Christmas leave right after I got back from Iraq. And that was in the December, January, 07, 08. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do when I moved there. And so I had a couple rucksacks, or, some people call them backpacks, that I brought with me, just in case, because I was just in the mindset. I'm like, all right, well, I packed out a bunch of stuff to bring with me, and I was going to leave some of it there. And I got there and I'm like, man, this place this place could go sideways at any minute. I mean, it was not like Iraq where you have gun trucks and stuff. It was like, no, they love a good coup in Africa, and it could happen anytime, right? And which is scarier in its own way when you don't have the support of anything.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I took some of my mindset, which was when you go out on a mission with a gun truck, you have a go bag or a Goruck in the trunk, and it's just extra supplies: bombs, guns, batteries, food, radios.
Just normal shit. Normal shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's normal shit.
Well, it's normal shit in case your vehicle's disabled and you have to fight for your life. You want those extra bullets. You want those extra grenades. You want that stuff, right? And so I made something for her without the weapons per se, but just in case, like, hey, bring this around in your car with you everywhere you go. It's just the basics of stuff, from running shoes in case that's all you have, in case you're. You have more formal wear on, which is, another lesson of when the towers fell. Another friend of mine had been in there and had to evacuate uptown in high heels. And she's like, that sucked. And from then on, she's like, I'll always have a pair of running shoes with me. Right. So you build this stuff out, adapt it to the environment, handheld radios and extra water and, some survival stuff and stuff like that. Right. Did another one for the house. It was like, okay, we started talking, what should I do when I move here and life's going to be perfect? And she's like, Jace, you should do the Goruck thing. And so what she meant was take the SF mindset, Special Forces mindset, and kind of go around and teach people what that was or would be. Because there's not really a middle class in much or any of Africa, but there's the haves and there's the have-nots, right? And the haves, there's a market there to kind of educate them on, how to be more prepared and stuff like that. But that was just kind of a pipe dream. But the idea for that kind of lived on. And when I moved back to New York, I put an ad in Craigslist, New York City for a backpack designer. Cause I was like, all right, this sounds like a fun little hobby. I guess I'll get started on this. I was still in the Army at that time. Sorry, I had put the ad in Craigslist, New York City when I was crashing on my buddy's couch, but I'd started the company before that, right when I got back. And so, feelers out and stuff like that. I thought it was going to be, a cool little hobby. And, so that just kind of it just endured and didn't really die, even though I went back, with nothing, not even the dog yet. And it was something to do that, the next 2.5 years I spent trying to get one bag built, and it's because I didn't know how to do anything. And I wasn't really committed to it. And then I got to business school. It's like, all right, it's cool to have a hobby to kind of put through this ringer at business school, because it's a lot of theoretical stuff at business school, even though it's case studies and it's live practical stuff, so to say, it's still, this is real. Yeah. And how do I pass this through the prism? So I spent the next couple of years incubating Goruck at Georgetown's McDonough School of Business.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be, not every class you take has got to be, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. I love every moment of this. But if you've got something that you can apply, whatever that lesson is, it probably changes your perspective. You say, okay, how can I apply this? Whether it's, accounting, whether it's marketing, whether it's, whatever it may be, right, that you're trying to apply it to, it's got to make it, okay, I could see how this lesson can apply, where I think university right now has such a bad rap, and it's like, it's not real life. Like nothing, once you get into the real world, then you really learn how it's done. But I'm sure if you've got something that you're building while in it, it could help.
Yeah, it certainly made it more entertaining. And then, I started to get my classmates, and we did little small classes, and then petitioned to the school to get those small classes turned into credit classes. So, there was times when I had 10 people over to my apartment working all on Goruck, and I was buying beer and pizza. Like that's how you do it. People.
That's how you do it. Yeah.
And they're paying to go to school to help, do this. And it was, so it was kind of just good timing. And it gave me a thing though. right? Because I've always, I don't love, I have this kind of thought in my head of walking into a cocktail party where I know nobody or whatever, and I have no real reason to be there, and I'm supposed to meet people and talk about stuff. Like, that's hard for me. It's really hard.
Sound familiar, Ben?
But
it does. I hate those things.
Very stressful.
Yeah.
Is what it is. I can do it. I've had to do it, but it's just really stressful. And so having this thing that was tangible and practical, and it was, something that was mine, it made that business school experience very rich for me. And it helped me make some friends. And, I made friends with a lot of the professors that helped work on the live case study. And that time spent was really well spent.
Yeah. One thing to note is during this time, it was the financial crisis, 2008. I mean, the economy was horrible. So not exactly the best time to be starting a business, I would imagine. So tell us about those early years and those struggles that you had just getting it off the floor.
So in some ways, it's the best time ever to start a business because, there's chaos, and chaos is opportunity. When you look at, the entrenched powers that be, when everything is going according to plan, my take is that the most powerful the strong get stronger, and disruption is harder. But when you look at even something like the last year, I mean, it's chaos, and lots of stuff has emerged, and, champions have been dethroned and underdogs are reigning. And, I think that those kinds of disruptions are, or I should say, can be blessings in disguise. And you can relate that even to something for me personally, like 9/11, right? Where it was hugely disruptive for our country, but I think you inspired a generation that wanted to serve America, people that would not have otherwise. And we've not yet reaped the fruits of that labor. So, I was never really interested in joining the financial sector, so to say, but the ripple effects of the economy were frankly no stranger to me. I mean, after, I graduated college in 2001, the dot-com bubble had burst, irrational exuberance was, a phrase that everybody knew what that meant, and all that stuff. And so it was just kind of, it's chaos. Well, it didn't feel that chaotic compared to where I'd come from in the Army. And, I was just really fortunate. I mean, I had the safety net, so to say, of the GI Bill, which and I got a scholarship and on top of that to go back to school. So, I was kind of taken care of on that regard. So I didn't exit business school with any debt or anything like that. And it helped me fuel Goruck. And, I just started hustling, man. I mean, the rucks, the gear, eventually figured out how to get that scaled in America, and they're really expensive and nobody wanted to buy them, and quickly came out with an event called the Goruck Challenge that I thought was going to be like a marketing campaign where I go out and take pictures and show people on Facebook how we're different and tough and stuff. And it took on a life of its own because people became the focus. So I'd kind of applied my background in special forces to build this gear that I wanted to thrive in Baghdad and New York City. So I wanted it to be military grade, but I wanted it to be simple and beautiful. Da Vinci, right? Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I love that. Yeah. And so, refine it and make it simpler. And then, it was something though that did that, but I'm in business school, but they don't teach you how to, get your first customer. They don't really teach you how to do, your first budget. They don't teach you how to go from nothing to something. That's the hardest thing to do, right? To build a brand, to really go from nothing to something. I mean, it's a load. And so, quickly nobody wanted to buy this gear that I'd spent now every dollar in half the deployment savings, because my wife and I had separated bank accounts that I had. I'd spent it all, and nobody's buying. And so, this event that I patterned after my training side of special forces, that proved to be the thing that took us from nothing to something. And it was just, this raw event patterned after the type of training that I went through. And, it was pretty awesome. And we just kept kind of riding that energy wave for the next, we're still riding it in some ways, but it's evolved. And that became Goruck, right? Like we build this really tough gear but there's tougher people. Let me show you what that looks like.
Yeah. That's
So you go ahead.
No, you go.
No,
ahead.
so you basically you build a community. Am I right? So is it
a real world community?
A real world.
Because everybody is out there and they want a piece of that word, right? Like, oh, the Facebook community. Like, fuck off.
Yeah. Say it again.
No such thing. That is a forum of toxicity.
Yeah.
Right. You don't treat people like that in a real community. And so, like the definition of a tribe historically was, you share food and you share defense.
Yeah.
Right. You're coexisting with these other people and you need them and they need you. Stuff like that.
And what did he say in
so,
Comfort Crisis? 150 people. That's it. We don't need 1,500 friends.
Right.
We need 150 people of community that we sacrifice together, that we serve each other, that we collaborate.
Exactly. And so what happened was in building these, it's really a community of communities, and I'm really passionate about this. So when you go back, like I learned this from my time in Special Forces. Let me explain. So people think, Special Forces is just about kicking doors down and doing all that stuff. Well, the Green Berets are actually force multipliers. And what we do is we go in and we train partner forces, local indigenous fighters, to be the best fighters they can be. And then you work by, with, and through them. So you go on the missions with them. You live with them. You break bread with them. You get to know them. You build rapport with them. And so that's the culture that I came from, right? And so taking that and applying that to I didn't know I was doing this. It just, you become what you know or what you do. And so I defaulted to, my training, and what was natural to me was I would go out to these cities and I'd say, okay, meet me on this street corner at 1 a.m. or whatever. And, you show up and I'll put you through this team event. I'll give you a day in the life. And at the end, it's like, hey, we did this really hard thing together, right? In the real world. And there was a standard. And my job was it wasn't the same as in, say, Special Forces selection, because I wanted people to be successful. I wanted them to go through, and I wanted to show them what it was like to really experience what it's like to be on a team, even if it's just for 12 hours or 3 hours or whatever the length of the event is. And so what happened, though, was those people formed their own communities. And they wanted to socially get together with those same people where they live. And so what we saw over the course of time was those people formed their own ruck clubs, they're called. Now we have over 500 spread out across the country and the world. And so, it's just people coming together in the real world outside. And then it's like, go to dinner together, drink beers in your buddy's driveway, go find a mountain to go climb, go find some event to go do, go to a music concert together, right? I mean, it's not all about, what happens online. That's not that great, right? It's like what you do with your life and who you do it with. That's really where you get fulfillment and happiness from. And so promoting that and espousing and really kind of spearheading that way of life for these people and becoming more physically active. So, to go back to Special Forces, rucking was the foundation of Special Forces training, not log PT and ocean PT or whatever you see on Discovery Channel. The weight is on your back and you're rucking in the woods. And that was because you don't go into combat with nothing on your back. It's not a thing. You have all your body armor and all your equipment and stuff. So you have to be able to carry load, right? And so rucking became the foundation for these Goruck events. And then it turns out if you do it with 20 pounds or 30 pounds or whatever with other people, and you can scale up if you want more, you can get a lot of people together. And depending upon the weight, different people can do different weights and everyone can get this experience together. And so this time together that you spend with people in the real world, that's paramount to our existence as human beings. And we forget this because we're chasing dopamine hits, or it's like we're chasing sugar, man. Right. And you can't just eat sugar. It doesn't work. And it's the touchy-feely kumbaya style. Hey man, just come over and let's do some push-ups in my driveway and drink a couple beers when we're done. And you're like, ask your buddy how he's doing, for real. And like, and then guess what you do? You sit there and you wait and you listen, and then you just keep talking. Like, hey, how's your life? Like, what else is going on? And at the end of it, you feel really good about it, and you don't have to post about it. And it's got nothing to do with that. And in fact, chasing that stuff, we have to learn how to set better boundaries, we as a people, because we know this to be true. The best memories that we have, it's when we're spending time with other people. Like, oh man, let me tell you this great story about I was online and like nobody wants to hear that story ever.
Yeah. So,
right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, so what is it about rucking specifically that draws people? I mean, I get the community aspect and being together, but what do you think it is about rucking that makes people want to do it?
So, I mean, first off, walking is the most basic form of human locomotion, right? I mean, think about the year 2020. It was called the year of the walker. I mean, we rediscovered walking, right? And so,
it's true.
Like, it's just to kind of say we've gone too far in this world of driving 45 minutes around a parking lot to find a closer parking space. But let's take this at face value and say, look, this is good. This is good. People were forced. This is the chaos I'm talking about. Like, there's chaos in people's brains right now about how should I be living? What should I be doing? And we know there are absolute and fundamental human truths that we need to observe and recognize. We need to be outside more. We're spending 93% of our time indoors, some people more. It's not good for us. Does anybody think that's good for you? Because it's not, right? No. We're shying away from anything physical. And when you look at the way that marketing works, everybody is selling the latest silver bullet, the latest fad. Everything that's fitness related is positioned as easy. Oh, this is easy, right? Look how fun this is. Just watch this Mr. Spandex on your phone yell at you to pedal faster. It's going to be fun, guys. Come on, let's do it, right? It sucks. It's terrible. It's not fun at all, right? And it's not fun or fulfilling. And there's a boneyard of fitness fads that have happened, basically since people started to become more sedentary. And there's a long line of those. And one of the things that's absolutely primordial to our existence is we enjoy and are fulfilled by time with each other outside. And you build camaraderie through adversity, and you do that with other people. And that forges bonds. That forges really strong bonds that's a two-way street. Again, very fulfilling thing. And so what rucking is basically you go outside with some weight on your back, which, there's a resistance challenge. There's all sorts of health benefits to your posture and your spine and all this, Tex-Mex, it corrects that, right? You should have a straighter spine. But when you sit too much in life, and all of us like, oh, I better maybe straighten my posture a little bit now, right? Because we forget how our society just doesn't do that. Right. But it feels really good to just go walk. But it's not an accomplishment. You can't post on Instagram about it. Like nobody cares. Like, oh, I went for a walk. Like, thumbs down, right? But it's so fulfilling. And so rucking is that thing where you can scale the challenge to whatever you want it to be. You can do it, and you can put 20 pounds on your back, right? You can take conference calls outside. Do that. Why not do that? Steve Jobs was famous for walking meetings. Just go outside and walk. That's the first component to it. If you want a little more challenge, then ruck more. Figure out ways to do these things that we know are good for us. Go outside, add some challenge, add some adversity to your life. And when you can bring other people in, then do that. So there's the social fitness aspect, and there's just the side of it's really scalable, and it's way, way reduced risk of injury. And the main reason why is because even though we walk so little, we're still comfortable walking. We practice walking, and rucking is based on walking. So as opposed to jogging, right, or running, which is a completely different gait, it taxes our body not only harder, but in a different way, right? Whether it's your Achilles or it's your knees or whatever. I mean, every time you land on anything and you're running or you're jogging, it's 9 times your body weight of force load onto your joints. When you're walking, it's 2.7. So with rucking, it's the same gait as walking, right? You just have a little bit more weight, but it's fractional relative to the injury risk of jogging or running. And, Michael talks about this in his book, which, a study that I'd found, it's one of the studies I sent him. I was like, hey, this study, the number one cause of injury in special forces is running. Right. Mm-hmm. And so not getting shot, of course, and not marching or rucking, running, not lifting, running. And so what happens when you run and you get injured? Well, first off, the first run you take is terrible. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows this, but I'm not against things that suck, right? I think we should do more of them. And if running is your jam, then keep at it, right? If you want to go run 100-miler and your body can do it, then awesome. But the problem is that for most of us, it just doesn't work. We've gotten bigger. The bigger you are, the harder it is on your body, the harder it is on your joints, right? And so then you hate it, which is not an incentive to go back and do it. And then you get a nagging injury. And then you've got the best built-in excuse, which is actually legitimate. Yes. I'm injured. I should not do this. Yes. I need to rest. So you get out of the habit because it's not good. Meanwhile, you still have to walk, even if, it's 50 meters instead of 100 to the grocery store, right? You still have to do this. So you have this foundational movement of rucking that you just don't have for other things. And you can scale up and feel really great when you do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, to that point, you talk about spending most of our time indoors. We're sitting hunched over a computer. Our upper body's all hunched over. We're calling on, our fight or flight, nervous system. And we start getting stressed out and we wonder why we're stressed. Then we, like you talk about, we go for a run and then we get hurt and then just start that cycle over again. So rucking seems like a very legitimate option for those of us that don't want to run.
And I think again, in the book, we keep making reference to comfort crisis is getting out and what rucking can get you to experience, right? Whether it's, hey, I'm going into the Rockies in Colorado or the Tetons in Wyoming or going up to Alaska. Or if you get into something like this, and this is something that I'm really, really like, I feel like I'm being pulled to something like this because I do well in nature and I don't give myself nearly enough time in it at all. And I just think of, okay, picking up rucking, I'm going to start like driving up to Oklahoma. We're in Dallas. I'm going to drive up to Oklahoma. Those are probably the most accessible, and I'm not even call them mountains, hills, right? That you can go and, get some elevation change. But it gets you to go do those things that you normally wouldn't take the time to do because you're just too busy. And I just think of the snowball effect that something like this can do to get you out and to find that peace in nature.
First off, good habits breed good habits, right? So once you flip a switch for your health, right? You do something, you just be more active and you stick with the routine, it becomes fun. I mean, this is hard for people who aren't living that to imagine, but it does. No matter how hard it is or how hard you want to make it, it becomes fun. And then you find other people that are doing it and it's even more fun, right? The other part is, maintaining the machine. And hiking, the definition of hiking to me is it's called rucking in the mountains. You put a rucksack on your back and you go ruck the mountains. That's what you do. And it's hard to train for that in a lot of places. It's flat in Florida, right? It's flat. So yeah, you can go, climb the stairs or do whatever, which I don't really ever do. I do box steps and stuff occasionally. But the point is like, that's the closest you're going to get to preparing for that. And if you want to do that longer in life, then you need to do more of it now, right? There's this Dr. McGill, who's also referenced in the book. He has this great saying that I talked to him about. He goes, train the movement, not the muscle, right? What are your desired outcomes in terms of what you want to be able to do? And for me, I want to be able to walk on my feet for as long as I possibly can. I want to die with my boots on, right? And then you can stack other things on top of that, right? I want to be mobile enough to pick my grandkids up and, tie my shoes and stuff, wherever you want to go with that. But start with that and work backwards and then have fun doing it. So, the train up for, your hills in Oklahoma or the Tetons or whatever it is in Colorado. I mean, the way that you get ready for that is you put a rucksack on wherever you are and stop making excuses and go outside and start rucking. It's pretty simple.
So it doesn't matter.
Multitask.
It doesn't
He's talking to me,
matter.
guys. I
Yeah,
feel like he's talking right at me.
Yeah.
Well, Michael talked about how he would vacuum his house with his rucksack, with his backpack on.
So this is what we're doing. Look, my son will tell you who's working with us today is my wife and I. We walk 4 or 5 times a week.
Throw on a heavy backpack, bro.
Yeah, that's all I need to do. I mean, I'm already doing this.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I may as well start to ruck. And you and I have had these conversations. It helped my neck.
Yeah, it would help
and my
back.
posture.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It also, it's resistance training, so it helps with bone density, which is especially important.
Which you
women
need to worry about because you're old.
Don't you worry about my bone density.
Yeah, we actually just went through a bone density test. We're putting it on blast. How'd you come back?
Very good.
That's what I'm talking about.
Osteoporosis is a big deal for older people. So
Okay. The bone is okay.
And it's like it's not going to kill muscle cell.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same stuff. Like you'll actually develop. I mean, the strong backs you see in the military don't come from back machines on post that nobody else has.
Right.
It comes from rucking.
Yeah.
Use your back. Use it to carry stuff, and that's a good thing.
Did you mention this? Sorry, did you mention this earlier? The calorie burn, the exponential calorie burn you get from rucking as opposed to just going out and walking.
Yeah, I mean everything is relative to speed, weight, distance, and all that, but it's not close.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael cites some statistics, 3 times and
something crazy,
stuff like that. But it's, and I would just tell you the feeling. I've never, occasionally in life I've gotten where my feet are sore from walking, but like my shoulders are never sore from walking. My thighs are never sore from walking. But when you're done with rucking, as you get better, and I would encourage you to not start with too much weight. Like start with 20 or 30 pounds if you're a good athlete, which of course you guys are. But it's like you can feel this kind of the weight, the resistance starts up here and it transfers down. I mean, you're still moving your legs, but it's on your shoulders and your back and stuff. And so it turns into kind of a fuller body workout, which I really enjoy now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get sore just walking through the airport carrying my wife's bag sometimes.
At least you're a gentleman, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Man, you've convinced me. I'm going to go to Goruck.com and get me one after this. After this episode.
So talk through some of the products that you have, the evolution, the new things, and as you discovered as the company grew, the demand and need and innovation that you guys created.
Yeah, so we started out with kind of one ruck to rule them all, a GR1, and it got put through so many events, and it was just the only main rucksack that we had for a while. It was my goal of building one rucksack, initially, and you can put a laptop compartment next to your back, but you could also stuff it with bricks. You can put a ruck plate in it now if you want to, and you can travel with it, and it's great. It's streamlined. Green Berets use it in war as well. It's tough, all these things. Over time, though, what we saw was rucking it needed more of a purpose-built tool and something that you could also do PT or physical training exercises with. So the rucker is our number one product now. It's just a rucksack that it's got a built-in compartment for a cast iron plate that we build in America, and you can put additional weight in it if you want to, of course, as well. And it's got handles all over it, so you can raise it up or do all sorts of different stuff with it that we end up doing. You can combine that with sandbag training at the same time. But that's kind of the foundation is, if you're going to start somewhere, start with a rucker and put some weight in it, and just whenever you're out walking with your wife or your buddy or whatever, put it on and you're out mowing the yard, call it mow ruck and get you some.
Mow ruck. I love it. I love it. You convinced me, man. I'm going to get me one. So what's the future like? What does Goruck go from here?
So, we've learned, we started out where 50% of our revenue was from events and 50% was from gear. We were always people first, community first. That's where our heart is. And over time, it's just been, the beauty and the beast is we're like 97% gear in terms of revenue now. There's been some pretty good growth to get us there, but it's just the events and stuff have been harder to scale. We were running 1,000 events a year, by the way. So it's not like it's not like the events are down. So, we're getting a lot more into the U.S. manufacturing side of things. We're building out our own manufacturing center in Florida. We're seeing increased demand for those products. We're building a lot more gear in the tactical side of stuff as well. So there's, that's a completely different side. But if you take extreme physical training as the avatar and you combine it with demanded proficiency in tactical training, you put those together, those are some of the events that we put on, and that scales down to sort of, basic beginners as well. And my take is like, if you own any type of weapon, you have a duty and a responsibility to be confident with it.
Yes.
Right. I don't care, I don't care, what your certification is. If you don't feel confident with it, then you're probably more of a liability than anything else. And so that's just something that's ingrained in our culture coming from the military. And so that's a different side of building out more gear. And then, we were going to build a Goruck app to unite the community. And what we found is that there's a lot of people out there in a lot of different types of sports or activities where the communities are not served, right? There's less money in it. Hey, the air is free, the perks are free, go fill them up, sweat in them, meet other people that want to do that. There's not a lot of money in that. But we wanted to build something, so we started a separate company called Sandlot, and it's Sandlot Fit or Sandlot Technology. And this is designed to empower local communities to say, hey, we're meeting at this park. If you want to join, then come join. And you think about, the 500 Goruck clubs, they're kind of the first. And there are these other communities that we've known over time, and we're putting them in there. Like, hey, we're meeting at Friday at 5:00 at White Rock Lake in Dallas. If you want to come for a ruck, it's 5 miles, come join us, whatever the case may be. Right. And so we're kind of, our goal is to democratize fitness through that and make rucking a big part of that. And this was part of a longer term strategy for rucking to be bigger than running. And so in order to do that, you have to create these ways for people to find out about stuff, and you have to bring people together. And I think there's too much in the fitness world right now where everybody's focused on one thing and you're just kind of always chasing something. And there's a lot more of us that would benefit from more exposure to a lot of different things. Like, give you one example, in special forces, you might not expect yoga to be a thing, right? But if you want to be more injury resilient, or you want to be more flexible, which makes you better at doing your job, and like I said, not getting injured, guys have started to take up yoga because they want to be the best special forces soldier they can be, right? And so you get all the, and it's not fun to do the same thing every single day. So you want to be able to kind of do different things. And so we wanted to build something that would allow people to get more exposure to different people that are out there in the real world, trainers and community leaders that are out leading stuff in the real world, and really unlock that and make it, easier for people to go do that and meet up. Because once you do that, once you find your tribe, but really once you find the confidence to go do these things, then it's easy to navigate. But it's finding that confidence, that kind of social acceptance of, wait, this is too hard, nobody else is doing it, and we just got to make it more of a compelling case. So that's a fun project we're working on. And we're also getting a lot more into the veteran mental health space. So every Veterans Day, we put on a workout called Chad 1000X. It's named after a SEAL Team 6 guy who took his life, committed suicide in October of 2018. The workout is 1,000 box steps on a 20-inch box with a 45-pound ruck. It takes about an hour. It's definitely possible to train up and do. And we raised about $100,000 last year. I think we'll raise $1 million this year. That's awesome. We'll see. We have some really significant partners, and his widow has become a dear friend of my, Emily and mine, and she's like family to us now. And so we serve at her pleasure, Sarah Wilkinson, and it's just a real honor to get to talk about that, because whether it's football or whether it's, the military, there's a lot of stuff going on with the human brain that people don't understand. Right. And the military veteran space is something that everybody wants to support. We just don't know how to do it. And we want to view bringing people together in the real world or organizing themselves in the real world in order to use physical fitness as a way, instead of, hey, here's your box of pills, or call 1-800-GET-HELP, which no thanks, nobody's going to do that. Or go sit in the shrink's office with the waterfall and talk about your problems. Nobody's going to do that, right? For me, getting back to, proper mental health through my transition, it started with getting more physically active, going outside. I had to spend more time outside, and I had my dog, and I'd walk my dog. And, over time that became a form of therapy for me that unlocked a lot of other things. I gained more confidence back. Anyway, so all these causes that we believe in, a lot of them are really starting to converge, and the mission and the purpose that we have of, building better Americans and inspiring service and bringing people together and creating a more active society and citizenry. I mean, we need to be more active as people, and when we're more active as people, these ties that unite us, right, they start to become stronger, closer to home. And then all that stuff that's going on far away, I mean, it seems less important, because what starts to matter is, the things that we can agree on. And that's got to start with some personal responsibility and some leadership at the local level. And we really want to empower, challenge, and inspire people to do that.
I love that. Any way we can help on that, please let us know. We'd love to support you guys on that.
Well, that's awesome. The website is chad1000x.com. Yes. And there are some significant partners that have lined up. We're always looking for good people that want to get behind it. And the cause is really near and dear to us. And so, I mean, I can back channel with you a little bit more, but, sign up, do the workout, post about it if you want. Right. But it's one of those things where it's a grassroots word of mouth thing. And we just need to take this on in a way that will work. And I believe that mass veteran suicide is not a thing. Right. Right. I'll say that again. Mass veteran suicide, it's not a thing. Veterans don't get together and commit suicide together. That's not how this works. What happens is when people get isolated, and they start to be isolated and alone, and the downward spiral begins, and they don't have someone around. And so we need to strengthen the places where people can have touch points with other people. And this is where sports and the military are the same. I mean, the love language, the baseline of the military is the baseline of football and other sports. It's physical fitness. Can you do, how fast are you? How strong are you? Right. How hard do you hit? Stuff like that. And so that's what will bring people together. And last year I went up to, this is the second year we've done it, went up to there was a one big live event. It was in Virginia Beach, which is where Sarah lives with their son. Their daughter is out in San Diego. But, it's where Chad served in SEAL Team 6. And, a bunch of Chad's buddies quietly came. There was these are the guys we didn't take pictures of. They quietly came to pay their respects by doing the workout. And then they would hang out at their, big giant pickup trucks, which is, because they're awesome Americans and they got big giant pickup trucks. And, they knew why they were there. And there wasn't some, waterfall in the back. There wasn't a therapist. There was just this kind of respect for the fact that he was of the warrior class, and something was wrong that did not, he was unbreakable, man. And you talk to people who have served with him, you talk to his wife, he was unbreakable, and something happened due to the traumatic effects, not just of, the violence he projected or whatever, but physical effects of concussions and TBI and stuff like that. Physical changes happen, and that changes a person. And so, we need to bring it more to the forefront so that we can get, this, if we poured as much energy as a nation into this as we were able to, thankfully, to solving the virus, right? To coming up with the antidote and all of that stuff, it's we would move leaps and bounds. We just have to kind of keep this in the forefront and raise money to it. And in the interim, we need to make this known so that guys out there, know that this can actually happen to you. Like rock bottom can happen. And this is what it looks like. We need to educate spouses, and we need to educate friends and stuff like that. And it will, to some extent, I think this will always happen, but we want to change the number. And we eventually, of course, we want to get it to 0.
Couldn't agree more.
No, you're right.
Well,
It's all too common.
Yeah.
All
Well,
too common
I know
for sure.
Tyler said early, thank you for your service, man. But that expands across the board, man. Not just what you did for our country and serving in the military, but what you're doing
now
within the community now.
Yeah.
I mean, you're giving back, man. And we love the product, brother. I'm moving on. I'm going to go and get you're not doing it, Tyler. Tyler, I'm looking in your face.
Of the three of us,
I'll be the first. I promise you I will be the first.
Of the 3 of us, I will be the one that does it.
I'm sending a picture.
Hey, okay, so I want to kind of circle this up, right? And I guarantee a lot of the listeners right now are like, hold on, we can't end this. I want to talk about the reconciliation with your wife. Bring that back, how you got married the second time. Because had we not answered that, I think everyone that listened would have been like, what the hell?
Yeah, so she had moved away, so she got out of the agency, but then moved to Brazil and got remarried and had a daughter, Natalie, who lives with us now. I love Natalie. And, there was some reconciliation that would have eventually happened, like that world sort of worked itself out. I know the innards of that world, the stepdad and all this stuff. And so, it was one of those things where we kind of were always friends, and that was hard. And it was kind of debilitating for a little bit, because at one point it was like, we were separated, but we're still kind of in touch. And it was like, at some point it's like, look, we're done.
Yeah.
And this needs to kind of go away. And, she was down in Brazil, and she sent me a note at one point, and she was like, hey, I'm moving back to Florida, and I would love to see you, And so it was one of those things like there was some years of separation there. And it's just, you love the people that you love, and sadly, sometimes it doesn't work out. Like sometimes, life moves on, and that's just the nature of it. You don't get a do-over. You don't get this, but life had kind of not at least fully moved on. And so, we kind of picked up where we left off, except not where we left off before the downward spiral. Picked up with, all the good. And it was kind of like, we had to make our peace with kind of an imperfect story, so to say. And we both had to kind of, like swallow our pride a little bit, because then it's like, oh, whoa, you guys are back together. And, there's always this sort of, well, this ended once, and, we just loved each other still. And so, but that's not enough. We had to figure out a way to make it work. And so we were fortunate to be able to do that. And so, Natalie's 9, and then Em and I had Jack and Ryan. So, we're very blessed, and I'm just grateful.
Man, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Well, man, loved your story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. We've got one final question we ask every guest, but before we get there, I want to let people know how they can find you. First and foremost, Goruck.com is your website. This is where we can all go get our, do you call them G1s? Is that what you call them?
GR1 is kind of the classic everyday carry. So if you're a traveler, or you have a laptop, or you're anything everyday carry, you can also do plenty of stuff with it. Trust me, fitness related, rucking related. But if you want to get into the fitness side, I would recommend the Rucker.
Okay, the Rucker. All right, so that's Goruck.com. Go get the Rucker. He's at Jason McCarthy on IG. Jason J. McCarthy. Sorry, Jason J. So JASON JMCCARTHY on Instagram. And then you're also a board member of the Green Beret Foundation. So all those resources are where you can find Jason. And then Chad1000X.com as well if you want to get involved with that. So
yeah, you got it. That's something that we do. I should have said it's over Veterans Day.
Okay.
So every Veterans Day we do that. It's kind of like you do Murph over Memorial Day, and you do Chad at Veterans Day.
Awesome.
Love it.
So it's wrapped up into that kind of that narrative as well, which just helps amplify that message.
Got it.
Man, I love it.
All right, final question. We ask every guest this. If you could go back to any point in your life and tell yourself one thing, doesn't necessarily mean you go change anything, but if you could just go back and tell yourself one thing, where do you go and what do you tell yourself?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just, when I'm just at rock bottom, like life's just a mess. And, there's this advice is like, this doesn't last forever. Mm-hmm. Like it will get better. Time will help heal this, right? Mm-hmm. There's some personal responsibility attached, but take the pressure off, man. Yeah. Take the pressure off. It's like, it was really hard to reach out for help. It was really hard to do those kinds of things. And so it's like, take it easy on yourself. Yeah. We're hard on ourselves. We're hard on others. And, you never know what someone else is going through. And it's like, not every day is going to be great.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of people listening to this that's going to resonate with. It's great advice, man. We so much appreciate your time. This was a lot of fun getting to know you, getting to know Goruck, and like we said at the beginning, we're 3 fans, and we love seeing what you're doing, what you're going to do going forward.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You guys are fun.
Let's connect. Let's connect on the backside of this. Just figure out how we can support you further on the chat.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The chat front.
I would love the help and support. I think there's some natural tie-ins that are just perfect.
Absolutely. Love it.
Thanks, man.
Well, all the best, man, and enjoy the time with the family.
Yeah, later, guys.
All right, see you.